The USS Gerald R is the largest warship ever built. From the flight deck, the horizon stretches in every direction without obstruction. Standing on that deck at 3:20 a.m. in the eastern Mediterranean, you do not feel the weight of what is below you. 4.5 acres of steel, 9 decks of combat systems, a nuclear power plant driving 260,000 shaft horsepower, and an Aegis combat system architecture so deeply integrated into the ship's electronic nervous system that the boundary between the weapon and the platform has effectively ceased to exist. You feel instead the wind off the water and the faint smell of jet exhaust from the last recovery cycle, and the particular silence of a fleet at sea that is not at rest but is holding its breath. It is February 26, 2026. Operation Epic Fury has not yet been authorized. The joint U.S.-Israeli strike package against Iranian nuclear infrastructure, military command nodes, and IRGC leadership targets is 46 hours from execution. The Ford's Air Wing is configured for the first offensive launch cycle. The strike group, 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, 1 Ticonderoga-class cruiser, 2 attack submarines operating in submerged escort, is positioned 290 miles west of the Israeli coastline, holding a patrol pattern that has been coordinated with Israeli Air Defense Command to ensure clear deconfliction corridors for the inbound strike aircraft. Every system is nominal. Every weapon system is loaded. Every crew station is manned at combat readiness levels. At 3:22 a.m., the Combat Systems Maintenance Officer completes a scheduled integrity check on the Aegis Systems AN/SPY-1DV radar processing architecture. It is a routine verification, one of 7 conducted during each 24-hour period when the ship is in a heightened readiness posture. The check compares active firmware checksums against the validated baseline stored in the ship's configuration management database. It takes 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The result is nominal. All checksums match. No discrepancies. No flags, except one. The checksum for processing Module 7 in the radar's ballistic missile defense tracking subroutine matches the baseline in the configuration database. The problem, invisible to every automated verification tool on the ship and to every manual inspection conducted over the preceding 6 months, is that the baseline itself is wrong. The configuration database entry for Module 7 was altered 11 months ago during a scheduled depot-level maintenance overhaul at Naval Station Norfolk. The alteration was precise, surgical, and executed with a level of access to the Navy's classified software configuration management infrastructure that required either extraordinary technical sophistication or an insider with administrative-level credentials to the system that stores the baselines. Someone changed what correct looks like. Then they changed the module to match. The maintenance check has been confirming a fraudulent baseline every time it runs. It has run 214 times since the implant was installed. It has returned nominal 214 times. The Aegis system on the Gerald R. Ford does not know it is compromised. Every diagnostic, every self-test, every watch officer review has confirmed full operational status. The implant does not affect the system's normal operations. It does not introduce lag. It does not generate error codes. It does not draw additional power. It does nothing under any conditions except one. When the system enters its ballistic missile defense engagement mode, the high-priority tracking and intercept configuration activated when inbound ballistic threats are detected, and the engagement timeline reaches the terminal phase authorization window. The implant introduces a 1.7-second delay into the fire control uplink between the Aegis combat system and the SM-3 Block 2A interceptor missiles held in the ship's forward VLS cells. 1.7 seconds. The SM-3's terminal guidance window is 2.1 seconds. The delay consumes 81% of that window before the interceptor receives final targeting data. At the engagement ranges and velocities associated with Iranian Fattah-2 hypersonic glide vehicles, the primary ballistic threat class, the IRGC, has positioned for retaliation against the strike group. a 1.7-second fire control delay does not degrade the intercept probability. It eliminates it. The Ford's ballistic missile defense capability has been rendered functionally inoperable without a single visible indicator that anything is wrong. The Iranian operation to install the implant did not begin with a hacker. It began with a personnel action. 14 months ago, a software configuration management specialist assigned to the Naval Sea Systems Command Depot Maintenance Program processed a routine access credential renewal for a senior civilian engineer who had been supporting Aegis maintenance operations for 11 years. The renewal was approved. The engineer's clearance and system access were confirmed. The engineer reported to work the following Monday at the Norfolk Maintenance Facility, where the Gerald R board was undergoing its scheduled Aegis hardware integration cycle. The engineer's financial profile had changed 9 months before his credential renewal. A series of transactions, individually unremarkable, collectively significant. A refinancing of a property at terms inconsistent with his documented income. 3 international wire transfers attributed to a consulting agreement with a firm incorporated in Cyprus, and a pattern of cash withdrawals, timed to coincide with travel to 3 European cities over an 18-month period. None of this was visible to the standard periodic reinvestigation process because none of the individual indicators crossed the threshold that triggers enhanced scrutiny. The CI algorithm that might have aggregated these indicators and flagged the pattern was a system that had been proposed, funded, and then delayed in implementation by 22 months due to a contracting dispute. It was scheduled to go fully operational in April 2026. The engineer installed the implant in March 2025. The implant's discovery does not come from the Ford. It comes from a server room in Langley, Virginia, at 7:14 a.m. on February 26th, when a CIA counterintelligence analyst reviewing the communications metadata of a known IRGC procurement cutout in Hamburg notices a message thread that does not fit the cutout's established operational pattern. The cutout's normal function is technology acquisition, sourcing dual-use components for Iranian missile programs through European intermediaries. The anomalous thread involves no components, no specifications, no shipping arrangements. It involves a single compressed file transmitted on a one-time-use encrypted channel, and a confirmation receipt sent back 17 minutes later. The confirmation receipt contains a 7-character alphanumeric string that means nothing to the analyst without context. She flags it and routes it to the IRGC Technical Programs desk. The Technical Programs analyst who receives the flag at 8:03 a.m. has been working Iranian military technology acquisition for 6 years. The 7-character string means something to her. It is a format consistent with the configuration identifier codes used in U.S. Navy Aegis software version management. She escalates immediately. By 9:30 a.m., the flag has reached a joint team that includes Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the Defense Intelligence Agency's Technical Collection Branch, and the office responsible for Aegis software configuration integrity across the fleet. By 11:15 a.m., they have pulled every configuration management access log for every Aegis-equipped vessel that underwent depot maintenance in the preceding 18 months. The anomalous baseline entry in Module 7 of the Ford's BMD tracking subroutine is identified at 1:47 p.m. The forensic reconstruction of how it was inserted takes 4 more hours. The engineer is identified at 5:52 p.m. He is in Norfolk. He has not been notified. He is under physical surveillance by 6:20 p.m. At 6:31 p.m., the strike group commander receives a message through a channel so restricted it has no routing header visible to anyone below flag rank. He reads it once. He does not pass it to his staff. He sits with it for 4 minutes, doing the operational calculus that flag officers are trained for and that no training fully prepares a person to execute. The Ford is 46 hours from leading the most consequential U.S. naval strike operation in 2 decades. Its primary ballistic missile defense system is compromised. The IRGC knows the strike is coming. They have positioned Fattah-2 hypersonic glide vehicles at 2 mobile launch sites in western Iran, specifically to engage the carrier during the strike window, using a targeting solution built around the Ford's known patrol pattern and the predictable launch cycle geometry of a carrier conducting offensive strike operations. The implant was the insurance policy. It was designed to guarantee that when Iran fired its ballistic missiles at the ship that would be launching F/A-18S against Iranian soil, the interceptors would not function. He has 2 options: withdraw the Ford from the strike, restructure a 46-hour operational timeline built around the carrier's air wing, using assets that cannot fully replicate the Ford's strike capacity, and accept the intelligence and operational cost of revealing the compromise to everyone who would observe the withdrawal. Or patch the system in 46 hours, on a ship at sea, with a firmware implant that has been integrated into the configuration baseline for 11 months, and whose removal requires reconstructing the validated software state of a combat system that cannot be taken offline during a pre-strike readiness period without triggering automated status alerts visible across the network. He chooses to patch. He transmits a single response: authorized, technical team soonest. The team arrives by C2 Greyhound at 11:40 p.m. 5 people, no manifest names, equipment cases that go directly to a sealed compartment on the 03 level without passing through the ship's normal supply logging system. They are the same category of people as the team that pulled the implant apart in the Hormuz scenario, in the Bahrain scenario, in every scenario where the Navy has had to perform surgery on a compromised combat system, while the ship it is installed on continues to breathe and move and hold its readiness as posture for a mission that is now 34 hours away. They work through the night. The challenge is not finding the implant. They know exactly where it is. The challenge is removing it without the removal itself triggering a cascading reconfiguration event that will propagate through the Aegis system's self-monitoring architecture and generate alerts visible to watchstanders across the strike group's networked systems. Any alert that reaches the broader network creates a reporting obligation. Any reporting obligation creates a paper trail. A paper trail creates exposure. Exposure potentially reaches the IRGC's intelligence network before the operation executes. The team has to remove a fragment of malicious code from a live combat system on a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier without the system knowing it is being operated on. At 2:15 a.m. on February 27th, with 30 hours remaining until Epic Fury's execution window, the lead technician encounters the problem that the team has been calculating against since they reviewed the implant's architecture on the flight from Langley. The implant's base code is entangled with a legitimate processing function in the BMD subroutine, not adjacent to it, not layered over it, but woven into its computational logic at the instruction level. A clean excision is not possible. Removing the implant code without modifying the legitimate function requires reconstructing that function from a clean validated copy, and simultaneously swapping both code segments in a single atomic operation that the system's verification layer will read as a routine update rather than a structural modification. The atomic swap has to execute in under 80 milliseconds. Their tools can execute it in 120. The next 3 hours are the kind of work that does not appear in any operational narrative, because it is not dramatic in any visible sense. It is 2 people at a workstation in a sealed compartment, writing and rewriting a 40-line code sequence, while a third person runs timing simulations on a parallel system, and the other 2 manage the network isolation protocol that is keeping the work invisible to the ship's monitoring architecture. The Ford is moving through the Mediterranean at 28 knots. The deck vibrates at a frequency that you feel in your teeth after 6 hours. The compartment smells of electronics and recycled air, and the particular staleness of a space where people have been working without breaks. Nobody speaks unless they are communicating a number or a status. At 5:08 a.m., The sequence executes in 77 milliseconds. The BMD subroutine initializes a self-verification cycle. It runs for 19 seconds. It returns nominal against a baseline that now reflects the actual clean software state, rather than the engineered fraudulent baseline that has been confirming false compliance for 11 months. The implant is gone. The system does not know it was ever there. The new baseline is pushed to the configuration management database through an administrative channel that overwrites the fraudulent entry without generating a modification alert. By 5:41 a.m., every diagnostic on the Ford's Aegis system confirms full operational status against a baseline that is now genuinely correct. At 5:45 a.m., the engineer in Norfolk is taken into custody outside a convenience store 2 blocks from his apartment. He is carrying a personal phone, a laptop, and a prepaid card with a balance of $340. He does not resist. He asks for a lawyer. He does not get one for 72 hours because the legal framework under which he is being held does not require it on that timeline. The search of his apartment recovers a secondary phone, 2 external drives, and a handwritten contact protocol written in a shorthand that NCIS cryptographers will spend 3 weeks partially decoding. A Cyprus bank account linked to the consulting firm holds $341,000 in transfers received over 14 months. Operation Epic Fury executes on schedule at 1:47 a.m. on February 28th. The Ford's Air Wing launches its first strike package, 22 FA-18EF Super Hornets, carrying a mix of JDAM-ER precision munitions and AGM-154 joint standoff weapons against a coordinated target, set that includes Iranian ballistic missile storage and production facilities, IRGC command infrastructure, and 3 specific sites associated with the Fattah-2 program that has been the center of Iran's anti-carrier strike planning. The strikes are precise. The target sets are engaged as planned. At 2:34 a.m., the IRGC activates its retaliatory strike sequence. 6 Fattah-2 hypersonic glide vehicles launch from 2 mobile platforms in the Zagros mountain region on trajectories calculated to reach the Ford's predicted position during its recovery cycle, when the ship's defensive posture is partially oriented toward managing returning aircraft. The trajectories are computed using targeting data that was built around the Ford's established patrol pattern and the strike geometry that IRGC planners have been modeling for 6 weeks. The Fattah-2 is designed to defeat conventional ballistic missile defense systems through its glide and maneuver profile, a depressed trajectory, terminal phase maneuvers, and a re-entry velocity that compresses the engagement timeline for any intercepting system. The Ford's Aegis BMD subroutine tracks all 6 vehicles simultaneously from first detection. The SM-3 Block 2A interceptors receive fire control uplinks through a processing chain that now executes in 340 milliseconds. The full, unimpeded design performance of the system, with no artificial delay in the authorization pathway. The first interceptor launches at 2:36 a.m. The second and third follow within 4 seconds. The engagement geometry is not clean. The Fattah-2's terminal maneuver profile forces the Aegis tracking algorithm to recalculate intercept solutions twice during the terminal phase on 2 of the 6 tracks, and 1 intercept solution is passed to the cruiser's SM-3 battery, because the Ford's forward VLS geometry cannot achieve the required intercept angle on the 5th vehicle. That intercept is taken by the cruiser at 2:38 a.m. at a range that generates a detonation visible from the Ford's flight deck. A brief, sharp light against the pre-dawn darkness of the Mediterranean, 40 kilometers out, followed by nothing, because there is nothing to follow. The threat has been removed from the battle space. The 6th Fattah-2 is the one the IRGC's planners had confidence in. It was designed as the follow-through strike, a vehicle timed to arrive 18 seconds after the defensive systems magazine was expected to be cycling between engagements. The 1.7-second implant delay would have ensured that the SM-3 covering this track received its fire control uplink, too late to achieve a valid intercept. Without the delay, the SM-3 launches with 1.94 seconds of terminal guidance window remaining. The intercept occurs at 22 kilometers. The Ford's crew on the flight deck, holding aircraft recovery operations while the engagement executes, sees a second flash. This one is closer. Close enough that 2 flight deck crew members report feeling the concussive pressure wave at the edge of perception. The ship's damage control net registers nothing. No fragment impact. No systems effect. Nothing except the data that records a valid intercept at 22 kilometers and the resumption of normal flight operations 11 minutes later. The after-action record will eventually note the following: 14 months of active intelligence work by the engineer. 11 months the compromised baseline went undetected across 214 verification cycles. 34 hours between the implant's discovery and the execution of the strike it was designed to defeat. 6 Fattah, 2 hypersonic glide vehicles launched at the carrier. 6 intercepted. 0 reaching the ship. 1 civilian engineer taken into custody. 1 Cyprus account holding $341,000 in IRGC-sourced payments. 1 40-line code sequence executed in 77 milliseconds at 5:08 a.m. that restored a combat system the Ford's own diagnostics did not know was broken. The most precise weapons in the IRGC arsenal, optimized over 6 years of program development for exactly this engagement geometry, met a defensive system that should not have been able to stop them. It was able to stop them because someone changed what correct looks like inside a server room in Langley. And someone else noticed that the thing the server room found did not match what the hardware was actually doing. The line between a carrier surviving a hypersonic strike and not surviving one was a 7-character alphanumeric string in a message metadata flag, caught at 8:03 a.m. by an analyst who had been doing the same job for 6 years and understood, at a level below conscious articulation, that some things that look like noise are actually signal. What the ocean saw that morning was a fleet executing its mission. What the record shows is something more precise. A weapon system restored to function in the space between discovery and execution, in the dark, at sea, against a clock that had no margin for anything less than complete success. The shield held because someone was willing to read what the noise was hiding.